Hello again and welcome back. My guests tonight on this comeback show need absolutely no introduction, but maybe we do because we've been away for so long for reasons beyond my control, but it is great to be back in the Sheffield Live TV studio this evening for the best part of an hour's sporting chat. We'll try to do this most weeks. Apologies for absence, but thanks also for following all the shows on my YouTube channel. It'll be downloaded, or is it uploaded, or whatever the word is, to there following the programme tonight. Carlton Palmer, as I say, old friend of the show, old friend of mine, going way back to his playing days at Hillsborough. Good to see you, Carlton.
Good to see you. Yeah,
brilliant. And another top midfielder, another former Premier League midfielder is on the show this evening. Neil Redfearn, the women's manager of Sheffield United's ladies team, and he's commenting on the event of the summer. The Lionesses' fantastic taking of the Euros trophy. Neil will talk about it from his perspective in the women's game, and also make some very good points about the future of women's football. I spoke to Neil earlier in the week, and we'll be introducing sections of that conversation during the programme. I guess you were transfixed by it as well, Carlton. It's just a wonderful success. Feel good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the tournament. I really enjoyed it. I thought the ladies played particularly well. But I tell you what I liked about it was taking me back to the days when I first started falling in love with football and seeing all the families, seeing all the kids in the stand, seeing the two sets of the supporters being together. You know, in men's football, that's not the case. There's always, you know, these days animosity. So it was great to see all that. And then, of course, with England winning the Euros, it was just fantastic for ladies football.
Yeah, there's a great wholesome feel to it. I absolutely take your point about that. There wasn't the hostility, there wasn't the hysteria that surrounds the men's game, the force of opinions, you know, merging into hatred, which you should never do. We were talking about that on Twitter only last night, weren't we? Yeah. Having an opinion is one thing. You shouldn't dislike somebody, and unless you're going to say, well, I support the National Front or something outrageous.
It should never be personal. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. That doesn't mean that opinion's right, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. And what's happened now, this has all come about, I think, because of social media. People can sit behind like Twitter and type something in and not really face anybody up or face the consequences of what they say. You know, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and whether that's right or wrong, nobody can say they're not entitled to that. But what they're not entitled to do is be disrespectful and be rude. They're not entitled to do that, and you know, obviously social media gives them that platform.
Well, you've got a platform tonight, and I know that you won't abuse it, if I could use the word abuse, because I know that you'll give a straight answer to a straight question. And I haven't made many notes. I mean, sometimes I make a few notes. I don't have to do that with you. I mean, let's talk about the football scene as it relates to the Steel City, first of all. And I tell you what, we'll start with Sheffield United. We know where your loyalties lie, but let's start with United, who came very close last season, got into the playoffs. How do you see the summer that they've had transfer-wise and their prospects this time?
Yeah, I mean, Paul Hickenbottom did a phenomenal job last season, didn't they? From where they were to get into the playoffs was an unbelievable achievement. You know, for both clubs in the end, it was disappointing. This season, I think Paul will be a little bit disappointed that in the transfer window he hasn't been able to do an awful lot, and that's going to be difficult for them to get promotion without being able to bring in quality players. It's as simple as it is. It is about having quality, and he's just not been able to do that.
Well, I'm not so sure. We'll have a difference of opinion on that. I think he's been able to bring in some quality. We're not going to fall out about it.
No. When I say what I say, I mean the centre half he's brought in from Newcastle is quality. Yeah. He's played at an higher level, and today he's been able to get a couple of players through the door. But prior to that, he hasn't been able to do a lot.
Anel Ahmedovic, if that's the right pronunciation, it might well not be, Bosnian international centre-back for about £5 million.
Yeah, yeah.
The others are kind of, speculating or, just backing the talent, backing raw talent to come through. Tommy Doyle, midfielder, Manchester City, and a couple of interesting attacking midfielders from Premier League clubs. James McAtee, signed today from Manchester City, and Rida Kadra from Brighton on loan. But I take your point, though, you're talking about proven ability at that level coming in.
It's proven ability, and as you've seen last season, when you have just what he would consider his best 11. If he doesn't have his best 11 out, he struggles. Hence, against Watford on Saturday, he had centre-backs missing. If he had his centre-backs playing, he gets the results, and the centre-backs are very important to the way that Sheffield United play. And that's when you need an abundance of riches, if you like, to get out of that league. They didn't have that last season, and I don't believe they have it this season.
What they haven't got is that dimension of that overlapping centre-back. They have Basham on one side and Jack O'Connell. A great tragedy for club and player that he's been out injured for so long. There's no brochure, is there, to replace... I know Basham, I think, could be back from injury this weekend, but there's no brochure, is there, to replace that sort of player.
And they're very important to the way Sheffield United play. Very important, I mean, the ball might be crossed on one side and the centre-back will be in on the other side. And that pins teams back. Teams are very unlikely to play three on top against, because normally against three centre-backs, you'd normally go, right, I'll play three on top, one down the middle and two wide, and make them go to a back five. But the way that the two centre-backs play for Sheffield United on either flank, pushing up eye all the way, you can't do that against them, because they will punish you for doing that. So for Paul, without his a so-called 11 they would like to put out there, then they struggle, like they did against Watford. I mean, they played within the game, they played well, and everybody put a shift in. But it would have been different had they had their main 11 players out.
And also that element, that chemistry that comes with those wide centre-backs. Whether the new guy, the Bosnian, can provide some of that. Apparently he's very quick and very strong. He may have been bought with a view to providing some of that. But, I think Paul Heckingbottom is pleasantly surprised. I'm a bit pleasantly surprised, because I thought players would leave there and that it could be a stagnation job. Whereas he has been able to bring 6 in, although he has lost his best player, Morgan Gibbs-White, who's obviously had to go back to Wolves. We'll
have to see as the season unfolds. I mean, the Championship is a very difficult league to get out of. We've seen that. I mean, to be honest with you, at times, I'd rather watch the Championship than the Premier League. The games are more competitive. There's no easy game. Anybody can beat anybody in that league. It's a tough old league. I've played in there, and fortunate for me, I've got out of that league. But to get out of that league, you need better players. When we got out of that league at Sheffield Wednesday, we finished 4th the following year in the top division. That was the quality of the players we had. I don't believe Sheffield United have that quality. I think they'll be there or thereabouts again, because I think Iggy gets them together. I think it was a masterstroke bringing back Stuart McCaw, and I think they'll be there or thereabouts around the playoffs again.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of what my crystal ball says the same. Somewhere competing, even though Blades, friends of mine, always say, I want to finish 1st, 2nd or 7th. They all say they just don't want anything to do with the playoffs.
I know.
If they can't be 1st or 2nd, they'd rather be 7th. We'll talk about Sheffield Wednesday's prospects and a bit closer to home for you as the show goes on, and some of the key players there. But let's introduce the first section of chat with Neil Redfearn, manager of Sheffield United Women. They play in the Championship of the women's setup, looking to push on and get into the first, or the Premier League of the FA Women's Super League. And I think he feels like every manager of every club in that setup a sense of inspiration from what the Lionesses did, the England's triumph that we all enjoyed, not least here in Sheffield with that wonderful semi-final victory at Bramall Lane and last Sunday at Wembley, of course. A sense of inspiration from that. And he, of course, enjoyed it all as much as anybody.
Oh, thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, what an achievement by the girls and, and by the governing body, the FA, to have the foresight to, to plan this. And obviously, recruiting a top manager in Serena Wiegman, who's obviously been the difference, between this group going on and actually winning a tournament. And I just think it's just been a real great event.
We know what it means for the country. Everybody was absolutely cock-a-hoop at the weekend. But what does it mean, Neil, in the context of your job at Sheffield United?
Well, I think what it's done, and the most important thing, and obviously this is where it needs capitalising on, is it's actually brought the women's game into a bigger viewing arena, if you like. There's far more people engaged with it. There's far more people seeing the level or the standard of women's football at international level. And I think there's a lot of people took this tournament in and really enjoyed it, and seeing the merits of women's football. I mean, it's not right to sort of compare it to men's football. It's a different game, it's played differently. The rules are the same, the same 11 players on the pitch, but it's different, in all four moments of the game, technically, tactically, and physically, and obviously in its own environment, it's elite, and that's how we've got to view it.
Indeed. I don't think any right-minded person would disagree with that, and yet there's still, or has been, an element of cynicism from the male population, bordering on disinterest at times, a little bit insulting, disrespectful towards the women's game. Do you think that is breaking down, or has broken down, or does it still exist there?
Well, I think the good thing is I think they're becoming the minority. That's obvious. And almost that they're being chuckled at a little bit. As there's been the labelling of them as gammons. People that don't understand the game. The game's moving on. Supporters in this country have really embraced it, and I think that regardless of whether men want to not like it or not, it's here, and it's getting bigger, and it's going to improve. And I think what it's going to do, there's no point putting parallels between the men's and women's games, because there is no parallels. I mean, the men's games had decades and decades and decades of of development and finances put into it, and the women's game is at another level, as regards its development, but it's improving and it's getting there, and it's getting there really quickly. And I think that what is important is that, as a nation of just people, regardless of whether you're men or women, that we embrace it, because it is really a good product.
Yeah, taking your point about you can't compare, but at the same time, you'd imagine there have to be things that the women's game can take from the men's game and learn from and develop. But equally, is it not true to say that there are things that are happening in the women's game that the men's game would do well to take on board?
I think so. And I think that, even at our level, I think what is really refreshing for someone like me as a coach coming in that's played in predominantly the vast majority of my career has been in men's football, playing men's football and managing and coaching in the men's game. And to come this side with the women and working in the women's game has been a real eye opener for me. I've learned as much from them as they've learned from me. It's about coaching a different set of people, how they learn and how they react, and how to get the best out of them. The principles of the game are exactly the same. The slight nuances in all the four moments, like I said, as regards the physical, technical, tactical element. But the bottom line is it's football, and it's a group of people that really want to get on and really want to develop the game in this country.
What's been remarked on, Neil, is it's perhaps a more wholesome football in terms of not so much or even no blatant cheating, very little dissent towards referees, no play acting, feigning of injuries, an ability to take a knock and get on with the game, less time wasting, all of those things. Do you find them refreshing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I mean, gamesmanship's been there for years, and it's you sort of grow up in football, knowing that aspect of the game's there, and it's some of it's been professional, and some of it's probably outgrown its worth, to be honest with you. But like you say, in the women's game, I think the beauty of it is that it's just the purity of the game that they enjoy, and being professional footballers is their ultimate aim. We're still semi-professional at Sheffield United, but the aim is to go professional. We've got to move now with the times. We've got to try and compete with the other clubs that have got these full-time resources, and the plans in place. But like I said, I mean, from the girls' point of view, or from women's point of view, it's a really good environment to be in at this moment in time, because it's football in its purity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think figures I've heard banded around, we know that at the top of the men's game, you're talking 100, 200,000 a week in some extreme cases. And I heard a figure the other day that I think in Women's Super League, the level above you, say, at the Premier League of the women's game, they're on 27 to 30,000 a year, which many people would say was just about a living wage, but doesn't compare in any way, does it? I mean, it seems totally unrealistic.
Well, yeah, it is, and and this is why I say it's wrong to compare, the both at this moment in time. Women's game is in the middle of a really strong growth spurt, which is great, because it's coming on leaps and bounds, and it doesn't need to compare itself to men's football, at this moment in time. I don't begrudge, men earning decent money. To be honest with you, the people come and watch them. They don't come and watch the directors of the support. They come and watch the team play. They should earn it. They're entitled to it. You know what I mean? That unless they pick the stands up and turn them the other way around, they should give it to the players. So I don't begrudge them that at all. But I think that as regards women's football, I think it's in this moment, it's not a lull, if you like. It's in this part of this progression. Yeah, I think we should enjoy this, because this is what football's all about. It's about wanting to get on. It's about the love of the game. It's about wanting to improve as players. There's no distractions in it. So finance is a distraction. Do you know what I mean, for footballers? But this is about, like I'm saying, this is about the game and its purity. It's about players wanting to get on, get to the next level, earn a decent career out of it. But it's not inflated. It's at a good point. And this is where I think, as a group of people playing in this in the women's game, I think this is where they should enjoy this bit.
And do you think it's a good thing that it's not inflated? And do you think we should be wary that we don't inflate it in the way that the men's game has been inflated?
Well, absolutely. I mean, and that's down to the powers that be. But naturally, that I mean, there's a disparity even at our level. I mean, Liverpool last year won the league, with a budget that was 20 times ours. So they're going to attract better players. They're full time. It just makes our task that bit harder, but it doesn't daunt us. It's a fact that we're still Sheffield United and we can compete, in the red and white stripes, and the girls are proud of that. And even that, to a point, is refreshing. It doesn't have to be about money. It's about players getting better. It's about improving facilities. It's about being associated with a football club. About all that, and and like I said, women are entitled to that as footballers.
Neil Redfearn, some strong views, some very, very interesting views, and we've sat and, well, I knew what he was going to say, but you've sat to Carlton in silence watching that interview. More from Neil later. Did you pick up on some of the points?
Yeah, but I have to pull you up on the salaries. I mean, some of the women are earning £60,000 and more.
Are they?
Yes,
Right.
yes, I know that for a fact.
got that wrong.
Yeah, I know that for a fact. So there is some decent. I mean, when I say £60,000, I'm talking a year, not
Yes.
in terms of a week, as in the league, in the men's league.
I heard a figure the other day on TV that they were talking 27 to 30 being a ballpark figure.
A ballpark figure, yeah.
But you're saying that
The top players,
some of them are getting 60.
Yeah, it's 60, yeah. They're earning good money out the game
Right.
now. I mean, nothing compared to the men's, but I agree with Neil. I think it's disrespectful to the men and it's disrespectful to the women to compare it's not a comparison. The women game's just starting off. It's being brought, if you like, into the light with what's just happened to the Euros. They were never fancied to win the Euros. It was a project that we're going to do, but they brought in a great manager. But the one thing I will say is, without comparing the two games, but I think this is a legitimate core, is that we have, like Neil and other men managing women's teams. So I will say this, Gareth Southgate can learn something from the England manager. She never once ever from the start of the tournament was anyway thinking about not winning a game. Every game she was super positive. She looked to the bench to make changes. She was positive and proactive. And that's the only thing I would say from Gareth going into the World Cup. You know, listen, it's not easy to win a major championship, but if you've got players around you who can change the game, be proactive with it. And that's the one thing I would say to Gareth. She was proactive all the time, even against Germany. It wasn't a case of, oh, we've got an injury or we're going to sit back. When they went 1-1, she made a tactical change, she had a go at it, and she was positive to go and win it. And that was her attitude that came through to the players, you know. And, you know, Gareth, by the grace of God, you know, penalties, we've lost out and we've been to the semi-final of the World Cup, but I liked her positivity. Now, to counteract that, I think because she's not English, she's not under the same pressure. If it was an English manager, she would have been under more pressure. Because she's foreign, it's one of those. She can come in and do it as she was. But she was brave. She made brave decisions in leaving players out who you would have thought would have been involved. And it was a breath of fresh air. To see the way they played. It reminded me of when I first started playing, and you just played. I played for the love of the game anyhow. The fact that I managed to earn decent money out the game, I did play for the love of the game, but that's what these women are doing now.
And I know that you're a supporter and a defender of Gareth Southgate, as I have been on social media, because his record is very, very good. Yeah. So it's interesting that you should make that point, that a lot of followers of mine on social media have come back to me about Sarina Wiegman and said exactly what you've just said, that our team can learn from that positivity. Our manager can afford to be more positive.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's easier. You always say the best jockeys are in the stand. You know, Gareth by penalties, you know, was away from winning the European Championship. But if you can look to your bench and you can win that game with what you've got on the bench, be brave. And that's what I'm saying to Gareth.
And early.
And early.
An hour.
And early, you know. But I think the comparison between the men's game and the women's game should be put to bed. And that's disrespectful to the women in terms of their game and their achievements, and disrespectful to the men.
OK, Carlton, that's brilliant. What a lively first half we've had. We've got more from Carlton, talking about Sheffield Wednesday in particular in part two. More from Neil Redfearn, analysing Sarina Wiegman and her strengths. And can she manage in the men's game? Will it happen? He's got a view on that. Rejoin us in about 5. See you then.